So welcome everybody to our first Jamlab Meetup for the year. As I mentioned in the chat, my name is Tepo Chabalala. I'm heading up the Jamlab project here in South Africa, and I will be the facilitator for today's session. For those of you who are unfamiliar with who we are at Jamlab, so our work really is to support innovation that grows and transforms journalism and media on the continent. And we also aim to develop media, that meets the needs of more audiences through innovation and entrepreneurship and research. Really our vision, and I'm sure you've seen it across social media, is to see new ideas, new information, new conversations that reach new audiences in Africa. And that's why today's topic is quite close to Jamlab's heart. How do we reimagine media innovation, and more specifically, media startups post the COVID-19 period? So before we get into today's topic, I'd like to share a few housekeeping sort of rules with you guys. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen so that we can easily see them. In the words of Professor Franz Kruger, who's the head of the journalism department here at WITS, he always says, please tweet and tweet often and use the Jamlab Meetup hashtag. We've also shared those Twitter handles for our esteemed guests in the chat, so you can sort of tag them as well and use the hashtag while we're in the session. If you aren't a subscriber yet, please do sign up to our fortnightly newsletter. Get updated with what's happening on the continent in terms of innovation and innovators. And with that said, allow me to introduce today's guests. First up, we'll have Dr. Njoki Chege, by the way, who recently got her PhD. Congratulations. She is the director at the Media Innovation Center at the Graduate School of Media and Communications at Aga Khan University in Kenya. The Media Innovation Center is aimed at enhancing media viability in East Africa and provides training, coaching, and mentorship to media innovators in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Njoki has worked as a journalist, an editor, and a lecturer in Kenya, and her research interests focus on media innovation and sustainability. We also have in the room Bilal Randeree, who is the Program Director for Africa and the MENA region for the Media Development Investment Fund, and also the South African Media Innovation Program. And is a mission, the MDIF is a mission-driven investment fund providing debt and equity financing to independent news and information companies that operate in countries where a free and independent media are under threat. Bilal has over 15 years experience in business, tech, and media. So without wasting further time, I'm going to ask Dr. Njoki to just give us an introduction I think it's almost 2 years of the Media Innovation Center, what they're doing there and what they're all about. Njoki?
Thank you very much, Chepo, and welcome to everyone joining us. It's a real pleasure to be here. So I will start this webinar with a presentation on the Media Futures East Africa project that conceived the Innovation Center of Aga Khan University. Okay, so I believe you can all see my screen and I will finally start. So this is the Media Innovation Center of the Aga Khan University. As you see here, pre-COVID, we used to have a lot of fun with a lot of events and meetups just like this. So what is the Innovation Center all about? So we are part of a project called the Media Futures East Africa project that is fully funded by the German Development Bank, that is KfW, and we are working together with our partners, that is the Deutsche Welle Academy, DWA, to support media innovation and media viability across East Africa. So this project has quite a very interesting architecture. We are divided into two working lines. On my left, You can see Working Line 1, that is the Media Innovation Center, in which we have our flagship program, that is the Innovators in Residence program. And we also do research, and we are building an ecosystem of innovators across East Africa. To my right, you can see Working Line 2. That is headed and implemented by DWA, and this project basically aims to create a regional exchange of media innovators and media experts across East Africa as we continue to support media viability in East Africa. So the Media Innovation Center does a lot of things. Key among them is our free training programs on business and storytelling, and also personal development. So our media innovators community are open and welcome to come and participate in our trainings, which are free. And in the past year, we have done about 9 sessions of free trainings on financial management, fundraising, and of course, training the digital trainer, as you can see there. But what I want to focus on today is our Innovators in Residence program, in which we invite media innovators from across East Africa, that is Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, to pitch ideas, in which we choose 3 winning ideas, one from Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, to fund and support, coach, mentor, and train. And so I will start off this session with a video from one of our innovators in residence. You will definitely know her, Asha Mwilu. She's one of the very successful journalists in East Africa. So here we go.
My name is Asha Mwilu. I am the founder and editor-at-large of Debunk Media. Debunk Media is a youth-focused independent digital media product that aims to explain the news to young people and connect the big events that impact their lives. You know, when you're thinking about starting a media business, especially when you've been a journalist, you're the storyteller. So you don't think about the business side of it. You know that exists, but you don't know the reality. So that's where I think the strength of this program lies. That the residency exposes you to training that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten if you started it by yourself. So the curriculum is amazing because you have business coaches and different ones who teach you about how to think about your audience, and not just from a storytelling perspective. How do you look at them as customers? How do you build your business around the customer, because customer is always king? How do you think about making money? What is a business model? It's a word that's always thrown around. So how do you now create your business model? What are the steps? And that begins way before you even launch your product. So that, I think, is like just, the star of the residency for me. So you can find Debunk Media on all social media platforms. We are driven on YouTube. Just search Debunk and you will find us. On Twitter, we are at debunk.media, the word. Facebook, debunk.media, and Instagram, debunk.media, and you can check out our website, www.debunk.media.
That was Asha Mwilu, one of our innovators in residence, who was talking about her experience. So she was in our first cohort. She just recently finished her residency period on January 31st, and now she's sort of moved out of the nest and has ventured on her own, but we remain very proud of her. So our Innovators in Residence program, this is the second cohort that we just launched. And as you can see on the screen there, we had a call for applications last year between September and October, and we received about 250 applications, about 125 from Kenya, 68 from Uganda, and about 68 from Tanzania, and about 57 from Uganda. So obviously you can see that these numbers really show that there's a huge market and a huge demand for this kinds of services in East Africa in particular. So the selection process was quite interesting and long. And of course, it began with a screening process where we just went through the applications to just ensure that they had reached the basic minimum requirements. We also had a pre-evaluation stage in which independent selection committees from each of the East African countries used a first selection criteria to identify the top 15, which we invited for a pitch session and later for a kickoff event to announce the winners. And so our current innovators in residence are experimenting with very interesting storytelling methodologies. And from Kenya, we have the Lamb Sisterhood, that is a feminist-driven startup that creates original content on women and all these underserved communities, as is the case in Uganda with the Minority Africa. That is a digital publication that's providing solutions on content for African minorities. And in Tanzania, we have the Honor Stories that is currently doing stories on virtual reality, augmented reality, and 360 video. So what we offer these innovators in residence is coaching, training, mentorship, and of course a grant funding of up to $20,000. And so we are looking to onboard more innovators in the coming months and just ensure that these services are available to not just innovators in the urban areas, but also those working in the rural areas with community media and all that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Njoki. Quick one before we go to Bilal. What do you hope that the teams leave the program with after the program? Can you hear me, Njoki?
Oh, sorry. I thought it was to Bilal. Sorry.
No. Before we get to Bilal, I want to find out from you. What do you hope the teams leave with after the time on the Innovators in Residence program?
Well, what we expect from them, obviously, is creating a better version of their product, their idea, what you call the MVP, the minimum viable product. But most importantly, what we want them to live with is that assurance that they have our support, that that we are always there for them, because we do a lot of mentorship and hand-holding. And I think really that is the highlight of our program. A lot of innovators that we've talked to are not really so much interested with the money. The money is great and all that, but what they really want is that access to mentors, access to coaching, and access to training, and you know, of course, fundraising opportunities and all that. So the one thing that we hope to leave them to live with us is the fact that they feel secure and that this is a really good and safe space for them to even come after their residency period.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Njoki. Bilal, I'll give you an opportunity to tell us more about MDIF and SAMIP, and then we'll sort of get into a discussion thereafter.
Cool. Let's see if I can get this right. So you guys can hear me and see my slides?
Absolutely.
All right, so SAMIP, so South Africa Media Innovation Program, launched in 2017 by MDIF with funding from Open Society and Luminate. The next few slides talk mostly about SAMIP, and you did mention MDIF in the beginning, but I'll just recap. You know, so we are a New York-based nonprofit, and we do debt and equity financing for independent media companies around the world. I want to, you know, just limit it to that, because what SAMIP is doing, and I'm kind of answering the question you just asked, Njoki, what we're hoping to do through SAMIP is to assist in building media companies that eventually become MDIF clients, you know, those, because MDIF looks at businesses that are sustainable, and we accelerate that growth that they're in. But SAMIP is a much earlier stage. And so how are we getting to that? It's a blend of capacity building together with grants and equity. Now, grants is something that MDF doesn't usually do. Our debt would be, normal debt like you'll get from a bank. You'd have to have some collateral, some assets. And equity would be an investment if you're the business that's growing enough that would make sense for an investment. So the model that we followed is, find qualifying candidates, support them with grants, support them with capacity building, and for those that then succeed, and we're at the final stage now of equity, we do early stage investments. To date, and so this would have been like January 2021, we've distributed, this is some numbers in terms of what's been released from the program already. What is SAMUP's focus? There's these 6 focus areas. I would, generally split them into 3 that are loosely innovation and 3 that are for South African purposes transformation criteria. So yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time delving on these, but it's along these criteria that we selected the participants in the program, and this is who some of those are. So at the moment, we've got 19 media organizations that are active within the cohort. And they range from, like there on the top right, you see CRF, which was one of the early participants in the program, who've now gone on and have very exciting developments in the form of the radio workshop. You can see Daily Maverick there, Quote This Woman, which is alumni of Jamlabs, some of you may know. Volume as well, another alumni of Jamlabs. I could actually spend a lot of time talking about these organizations because this is what makes SAMUP SAMUP. What I would highlight, though, to Njoki's point about what startups are looking for, and I totally agree. And in addition to that, what we've seen is this cohort within SAMUP, where like Yusuf from #OurStories can reach out and get assistance from Stilly at Daily Maverick or Mike at CRF. And it's something which unfortunately only happens because there is a program like SAMUP, but to the audience, I would say something that needs to happen more in the media space, right? Independent media, whether you're a participant in a program like SAMUP or whether you're in East Africa and benefiting from the Media Innovation Center there, other independent media companies are not your competitors. Like your competitors are, well, I don't want to get into who are your competitors, but these are your partners. And the amount of collaboration and assistance that we've seen within the cohort is quite promising. And I think a big step in helping meet the many hurdles that media are going to face. Not to take too much more time, but I want to just give a bit more explanation. So when we talk about capacity building, it's this ongoing strategic advice that us as the team and MDIF staff as well are able to give. But we also do mentorship, and each participant in the program gets assigned a mentor, someone who can bring an objective but a strategic lens. Sorry. There's some examples here of some of the events that we've done. Again, quite self-explanatory. So the one I would highlight is the one on the bottom right corner, the session that we did on lessons on podcasting, because this type of learning is important. What we always say to our participants when we give them platforms like this to share is, even your failures are useful for others. Like what we want to do, and this is what we do through the program as well, is to say, like what's important is to identify why something failed, whether it's an entire business or even a project or element within a business, because this is part of innovation, the experimenting, the trying to see, okay, what's going to work, what's not going to work, and sharing those learnings so that others don't, when you're successful, they don't have to recreate the wheel. But to identify where something went wrong at this organization for this reason, so that if somebody else wants to try something out, they don't go and make the same mistakes. In terms of impact, 2020 was a very interesting year for us, helping these newsrooms that we work with pivot during this pandemic. We were able to do that by one, limiting the pain, either through grants or other initiatives that would reduce the cost pressures on them. Our shift in capacity building, obviously moving everything online. We were able to do that also because we were doing stuff online before that, but also, doing our own events online, but online events becoming a mechanism for media companies to both keep engaging with the audiences, but also generate revenue. We had some very successful crowdfunding campaigns that ran, and there's some resources that we've made available and more that will add to that. Because many organizations think crowdfunding is putting up a GoFundMe link or something on your website, whereas all these steps of identifying who your audience is, engaging with them, having a relationship with them, communicating with them before you actually go and ask them for money, the making the most of the virtual world. So trying to still keep community events. In fact, these screenshots here, this was for I think it was the final event we did in 2020, bringing the many different SAMA participants together from all over the country. And yeah, that's pretty much it from me at this point. I would say there's more information on the website about the program, and I'm hoping we can deal with specific questions, therefore from yourself or even from some of your audience. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Bilal. And just to tell the audience as well that please feel free to ask any questions using the Q&A functions, and I'll get to them. But before I get to other questions, I want to ask you, Bilal, and also probably you, Njoki, how have you kept up the momentum with the teams, to keep them going throughout the pandemic? We as startups or as people, we are used to collaborating and seeing each other in person, and I've seen it on the Jamlab program as well, where the teams work best when they're in the same room. How have you guys kept them going and keeping the momentum of what they're doing and what they need to achieve while on the program? We'll start with you, Bilal.
So, I mean, firstly, I'll say it's not easy, and it shouldn't be easy. I mean, this is literally a pandemic. So let's, yeah, I'm not going to say anything and take credit. I would say it should be difficult, and if anyone's experiencing difficulty, don't feel guilty, don't feel bad. Like, it's, excuse my language, but it's been a shitty situation. That said, there's been opportunities that have come up, and providing the platform, one, but also that sort of approach to say, everyone's thinking like, pandemic and media are so badly affected and newspapers are shutting down left, right, and center. Very early on, one of the, and I don't even know where the quote came from, but something that I kept on quoting in SAMUP events was, don't let any crisis go to waste, right? So what is a crisis for magazines that are shutting down is an opportunity for you as a small online publisher to now access advertising funding that you weren't able to access before. It's an opportunity for you as a digital first platform that was already reaching out to audiences online to take advantage of that edge you have over, the biggest players, the slower players, those who were not natively online and would be struggling to get to where you are now. So that's not to say that we solved all the problems, but these are some of the approaches and some of the thinking that I think certainly helped and resulted in some of the success that we've seen. Participants, or let's say these media companies that we work with, end up the year. So a number of them have ended the year, with a reasonable amount of success, all things considered.
Thanks, Bilal. Njoki, how have you guys kept the momentum going there with the teams on the program?
Yeah, so one of our innovators, that is Asha, actually launched her product in the middle of a pandemic. on July 1. And this was a culmination of a really long period of preparation, almost 6-7 months of preparation. And the one thing that really worked for us is that we give them the opportunity to be flexible. When it comes to media innovation, flexibility is a virtue. A lot of things that they had planned did not work out. They had planned to travel across the country, doing stories and all that, but those did not work out. So we really encouraged them to be flexible enough to change their plans, to adjust their work plans here and there. And also from mental health perspective, I think it was very important that we kept checking on them. Their coaches were really supportive in this sense, in the sense that they constantly held meetings with them, even during lockdown and all that. Those weekly meetings, just over and beyond just talking about the startup and everything, but really asking them, how are you doing? I mean, one of our innovators was sort of in a transition period from an old job to starting the media company, and so they needed a lot of support and all that. But one thing that I have seen working is having these innovators collaborate even in spite of the pandemic. Just having them check on each other, sort of like update each other on what they're doing and all that. I think that was really important from our side. Thank you.
Cool. I see a question that just came in here for Bilal. It's asking, how could you expand a little bit more on how you envision the collaboration between innovators and also between different innovation programs like MIC and SciMed, for example? How could we join forces to reach our common goal, strengthening quality media?
Okay, so I would split that into two parts. The first part is, talking about what we've experienced or what we've seen. Okay, so I want to first tackle this word innovation. Innovation, I mean, it's in our name, and I guess it's in your name as well, Njoki. And so we keep getting asked the question, so what do you mean when you're looking for media companies that are doing innovation? And I think it's actually quite simple. Innovation means different things depending on what audience you're dealing with, what level you're at. Innovation shouldn't be the same for a well-funded company like in Stanton versus two friends out of university kicking something off in Durban on the coast, right? And the danger, let me just say on this word innovation, is people we always see, oh, we're going to be launching an app that can read your mind and tell you what news you're going to want to know. And no. The best innovation is the simplest, the stuff that's easiest to understand. And in fact, the more important word I would associate with that is efficiency. So if you're going to come up with a smart idea and that thing's going to cost millions to develop, then yeah, maybe it's innovation, but that's Elon Musk level stuff. What is going to make you sustainable and what's going to help you grow an audience and what's going to generate revenue is the simple idea that for every rand that you're putting in, you're going to get a rand plus out. And if you're able to do that through getting grants or through applying for programs or through growing an audience and getting a way to generate revenue from them, then you're going to survive. So some of the collaborations we've seen is partnerships between participants. The most recent being G Sport for Girls did a collaboration with Mail and Guardian. So, Mail and Guardian, as we all know, it's a newspaper, like many newsrooms, prioritizing certain areas, maybe sports not being one of them. And G Sport, on the other hand, focusing on sport, and not just sport, but women's sport. So, that sort of partnership, now when you look at it, it makes so much sense. It's helping G Sport's mission of highlighting and adjusting the inconsistencies in the coverage of sports. Men's sports is everybody's wanting to fund and advertise and sponsor. Yeah, so that's just one example. In terms of how we could join forces to reach our common goals, I'm not sure who the question is from. Njoki and I have, I guess quite recently spoken about, sharing our experiences. And I think all of us here on this call, so Jamlabs, MIC, SAMUP, yes, certainly we're all fighting the same battle. And at a minimum, the sharings that we're doing on platforms like this, sharing our experiences, what's worked, what hasn't worked, providing these platforms, I think is at a minimum. And I think that maybe hopefully answers your question. That's what gets us towards strengthening quality media. There's a few other questions that I saw there that, if you allow me, Seppo, I'll quickly deal with.
Sure,
so
go ahead.
On the first one, the training that SAMUP's providing, so while the training is designed or targeted at participants in our program, especially even before it was online, we would open it up to others who are, let's say, outside the SAMUP family that could benefit. We definitely always try and do that. Now that it's online, it's even easier. So the easiest way to get access to that would be drop us an email and we'll add you to a mailing list. Or even if you go to the website, you can get added to the mailing list right there. I'm not sure what your business is or what you're working on, but we could even have a discussion more specifically around what we're doing that could overlap with the needs from that first question. For Brian is asking the requirements for funding. I don't know if it's possible to even put Brian on the spot here, but okay, so well, maybe it's not, and I want to open the wrong tangent here. SAMUP as a program is coming to the end. So, as maybe I didn't explain too clearly, we started off with giving out grants, and then together with the grants and capacity building over the last 3 years, we've entered the final stage of the program this year, where we're doing investments into those that are ready for investments. Not every one of the 19 participants in the program would be ready. And that's an important point as well, is because, when's the right time to apply for funding for a startup, for a grant? When's the right time to apply for investment? These are things which I guess, well, it's not so straightforward. Not every organization should be getting funding. And I think this is part of the problem in the industry when it comes to, the media support, and how that funding could tend, and not always, but in some cases, it tends to distract you. Like two people, media-minded journalists, whatever, set out to achieve something, making decent progress down that path, and then see a call for proposals, and then say, oh, this is a good way for us to get money. And then what they do is they distract themselves from what it is that they set out to build, and now start meeting the requirements. So I don't want to list out what SAMUP requirements are, and encourage anyone here to say, okay, now we're going to start focusing our startup on being able to qualify for funding from SAMUP. But rather, my message would be to anyone, and it's not just limited to media, but whatever it is that you're building and creating, yes, you have to worry about funding, and you have to have, in parallel, an eye out to see how can you sustain your operations. But the number one way to get funding, whether it's grants, whether it's investments, is to succeed at what you're setting out to do. And I know it's like now, maybe it's super obvious, but it's not obvious when you see it in practice. Like we see it all the time, is that, this company was doing really good serving an audience, and now they've neglected what has been working because, there's a different carrot being dangled in a different direction. So what we've tried to do through the program was always to say two things: be very flexible in the support we're offering and the funding that we give out. To say, like, businesses fail. What's important is to understand why something is failing. And you need to be able to pivot and move in the direction of where potential success lies. You may fail, like you may start down a certain path with a grant from SAMUP, you fail, and then you pivot and you're in a different direction, and you may fail again. And that's fine. Like, as long as you're acknowledging and identifying why you're failing, and then looking for the opportunity. And there's some examples, case studies in the SAMUP experience that, we're adding to the website, and we're presenting as learnings from the experience that we had. So I'll pause there and let somebody else talk for a second.
Cool. Thanks, Bilal. I want to go back to the question of collaboration. Njoki, I know your program spans Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya, and you work a lot with the hubs in those countries, the main cities, to help you support the programs. Can you share a bit of light on how you've collaborated with the hubs and what are they doing to support the program?
Yes, Chapo, you're quite right that with our East African mandate, sometimes it's impossible to, reach out to everyone across the region without the help of partners. So our partners come in very handy in reaching out to those pockets of East Africa that generally would not access the Innovation Center in Nairobi, Kenya. So to that effect, we've been working very closely with Media Challenges Initiative in Uganda. So it's led by Abbas Mpindi, and it's a space for media innovators to come together and have conversations, trainings on media viability and all that. So in Tanzania, we have the Tanzania Media Foundation that is led by Foster Musokwa, who I think is now also part of this webinar. So over and above the research that they do, they also support news media organizations, community media through training and mentorship and all that. So you're right that it's important that we work together with partners, and they come in not just to help us access those startups in Uganda and Tanzania, but also to house our innovators in residence. So they host our innovators and our innovators sit with them, they provide desks and all that, but that's just part of it. They also provide that contextual mentorship that we might not provide sitting in Nairobi, Kenya. And I think that's also important. And also creating that ecosystem of innovators is quite impossible if you do not have partners outside there. We do have, an Aga Khan campus in Uganda and Tanzania, but when it comes to media innovation, it's something very niche. And it's very critical that you work with the people who have their finger on the pulse. And that's why MCI and TMF come in handy for us. And also I think in the future, we'll also be looking at how we can support even MCI and TMF to have similar innovation centers within community media, and because MCI and TMF are actually situated in the urban areas. So really, we just reach out in Kampala and Dar es Salaam. What happens to those other areas? And I think empowering them to reach out to other pockets of Uganda and Tanzania that do not have this kind of services is something that we're very keen about going forward.
I mean, do you have plans of expanding the program into other countries in East Africa, like your Rwandas and your other countries in the region?
Yes, absolutely. I think that is the game plan. But for now, the fact that this is a pioneering, media innovation center in Africa, within East Africa, not in Africa, this is Jamlab before us. I think that is something that we're really thinking about, because even for innovators in residence, we started with Kenya because it was really a pilot project. And now we are in Uganda and Tanzania. So yes, absolutely. We are looking to go into Rwanda and possibly Burundi and other countries. Obviously, that is the plan for Innovation Center 2.0.
Awesome. Before I move on to Mike's question, I want to come back to you, Bilal, to a question that you answered. You said you'd come to from Deji. Can you also expand more on how SAMIP is planning to scale up into the rest of the continent?
So what we've done so far, because we've had this application section. Let me clarify it. We've got an inquiry form open on the website. And one of the reasons we've kept it open is because we've kept it open in a sense, like we've been getting queries from Zimbabwe and Zambia and Mozambique and all over. Our plans, and they're not confirmed yet, it's what's still in the pipeline. We'd like to, once SAMIP in its current form ends, we'd want to kick off the next version of it as a more regional program, and for two very specific reasons, right? So one is South Africa, and especially the neighboring countries, a stronger media in South Africa and a stronger media in Zimbabwe are complementary, and so developments here can easily cross over the border, and audiences also don't follow borders as that strictly. Like there's certainly audiences. In fact, I think a big opportunity for a startup is the untapped South African, Zimbabwean diaspora in South Africa. Like, who's serving them, right? They may be able to access media that's being produced in Zimbabwe, but I think that market is so big, and this is anecdotal. So I'm saying it's an opportunity. Someone can test it and say, no, actually, it's not an opportunity. But I don't see that. I haven't seen innovation in that space yet. But I'm going off on a tangent. My point was that we gathering or collecting all these applications and seeing what the interest is, so that when we are ready to launch the next version of SAMIP, we've got some starting point. We've got email addresses, and we've got some idea of who the different startups and media operators are. So I hope that answers that question.
I think it does. I'll come to a question. Sorry, Bilal. I'll come to a question directed to Njoki. We've got about 12 minutes left of the session, so I just want to sort of get to all the questions. Njoki, Mike is asking, are you supporting many podcasting initiatives in your innovation work? Secondly, is this tendency to support podcast development, production of shows, and yet there's little emphasis on how to market and promote podcasts and get an audience? Mike is just wondering, since there are so many podcasters happening across East Africa, if you have programs that are working around podcast promotion and audience building.
Thank you, Mike, for that question. Yes, so one of our innovators in residence, particularly from Kenya, that is the Lamb Sisters. Their basic mode of storytelling is podcasting. And I agree with you that there is a podcasting boom in East Africa. I mean, and it's amazing, whether it's legacy media or community media. I think audio is really seeming like it's the future for media in East Africa. And I think you bring out a very critical point. Are we just not just teaching them how to produce a podcast? Are we teaching them how to market this podcast? And that also speaks to the business sustainability aspect of this podcast. So yes, part of our training, and we actually recently did a needs assessment with our lead trainer. And what she found was actually very interesting, that a lot of these startups are fantastic storytellers. They are really, really good at what they do from a storytelling journalistic perspective. But what they're lacking is the business aspect, the marketing bit, the PR aspect. And so we've tailor-made our training, which is actually open to the community, including yourself, Mike. We've tailor-made that training to include those aspects of the business that they might not have encountered before. Obviously, marketing, business model and all that, business modeling and all that is part of it. So I agree with you that there's a gap. We are encouraging East African innovators to get into audio, but we're not giving them the skills to market the audio. We're not giving them the skills to bring out and tease out possible business models to sustain those podcasts. And through our training, we are trying to do that. We are not there yet, but I think this is where this South to East collaboration between the Media Innovation Center and SAMIP and MDIF and Jamlab come on board. How are we going to equip these innovators with the right skills, not just storytelling skills, but also business skills, marketing skills, and PR skills? Thanks.
Awesome. Bilal, I've got a question from Liesel, who's a Jamlab Accelerator former participant, who's the founder of Answerable, a new venture that uses reporting, fact-checking, and promise tracking to hold politicians and civil servants accountable for spending and service delivery at local government level. So Liesel is asking, when you look at an application at Jamlab, what kind of data or evidence convinces you that the applicant is good at what they do and has the potential to build a sustainable venture? I guess this question also applies to Njoki, but let's start with Bilal.
Okay, so I saw that question and a bunch of others that came in the comments. So I've just dropped the Jamlab email address there in case. I know we're getting close to the end. If anything doesn't get answered, feel free to reach out to us on email. Before I answer the question, I just want to add to what Njoki was answering to Mike, and not add in terms of answer, but like I would say Mike at CRF and the work that they've been doing with their team at the radio workshop, like this is a problem with these Zoom webinar. I guess it's a problem that not a problem in the sense that somebody needs to solve it. Just the limitation of this pandemic world. So yeah, I would say, in addition to what Njoki said, if anyone's interested in the podcast space, reach out to CRF because they know a lot of stuff, and I'm sure they'd be super helpful and useful in trying to also answer these questions. So on the question, what we specifically at Jamlab look like for an application. So the process, and again, I don't think anybody knows. Nobody's got a silver ball and can look and say, oh, for this startup, it's going to be able to succeed. There's what we've done with Jamlab is the advisory committee that brings together expertise from the business world, expertise from an academic space, and expertise from the media world, together evaluating everything that gets submitted, comes up with a decent answer. Is it the perfect answer? Are the candidates always guaranteed success? No. But the point I want to raise is having the luxury, and then the reverse for the startups on this call is, this is the insight you want to get into your own operations, because you don't want to be too much on the business side and then you're not caring about the journalism, right? You don't want to be too focused on the journalism and then you're not finding a way to build it out sustainably. So what's critical is to have different skills within your organization, and when you're able to get input and advice and expertise, you also you want a range of those expertise. You want someone who's going to come in and see things differently and challenge your assumptions. A point I always make is, and especially for the journalists on the call, journalists are smart people. In fact, often they're the smartest people in the room. But this point is perhaps the #1 reason why businesses led by journalists fail, because you're so smart, you know everything, you're going to act off what you know rather than what the data is telling you, or rather than what somebody else is going to challenge your idea. So I would always, and I guess I'm way off tangent now, but this point of when the success, those metrics need to be objective. Someone needs to evaluate your business and say, you're able to go from 100 viewers to 200 viewers because you did this, right? And if you can come on go on a pitch or pitch to someone and say, yes, I've got this amazing platform. What's your viewers? What number? What are your audience saying? What impact are you having in the communities you're working on? Like all of these sorts of things, roughly categorized as data, is what needs to make the case for you, not what we tend to tell ourselves and believe. Thanks, Devo.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I don't know if you guys have any closing words. I want to go over time. But if you have last questions in the chat, send them through. Njoki, do you have any closing remarks that you want to put out there for everybody? Maybe advice to give to startups that are working within the media space. What should they be looking out for? What is the secret sauce to being a successful media startup on the continent?
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Chapo. I think closing remarks would be to media innovators on the call. I think this is a really ripe time for media innovation in East Africa. And the one thing that we have been consistently seeing with our innovators is the fact that they really want to reach out to young people, the under 35s. So I think for your innovation to be consequential in Africa, it has to be very specifically targeted to young people. Those are some of the white spaces that I would identify. And also I think this webinar would be completely not very useful if it did not have the benefit of us coming together as Jamlab and Samipam and the Media Innovation Center to continually host these kinds of conversations, whether it's in the form of a webinar or a small digital conference, research partnerships, co-application of grants, and introducing our participants to each other. I think that would be really important. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Njoki. That's really something to take forward, which we at Jamlab look forward to. Bilal?
I would add, so not repeat anything Njoki said, but I would add that, to answer this question of what makes a successful media startup, don't ask me. Go ask somebody who's done it, right? I mean, what I would like you to ask me, and in fact, the value and the contribution I would like to make into the individual business of every entrepreneur that's on this call is to have a conversation. So, I mean, while these webinars are great, I think it's only part of the exercise. If someone is willing, and I mean, it needs to be a mature decision to say, yes, sit down with Samip, so me and the rest of the Samip team, or anyone else for that matter, and allow us to poke holes in your assumptions, allow us to, rip your business model apart, right? And do so with respect, because that's what's going to make it stronger. That's what's going to make you better than the next decent. That's what's going to make your idea an excellent idea compared to the next like okay or decent idea out there. And it's an offer I'd like to make to everyone here that reach out if you want to engage, if you want to talk. That's certainly what I would feel strongly as the next step in this process of supporting young media startups.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Bilal. And I echo what Bilal is saying, and I'm sure Njoki also agrees. Please do reach out, because really our work here at Jamlab, Samib, and the Innovation Center in Kenya is to really help, and support the work that you as the innovators are doing. We can only do so much, but the work has to come from you. But with that said, thank you so much. And in the spirit of partnering and working together and showcasing what's been done, please join us next week when we host our 4th Jamlab Demo Day. So this was our first sort of iteration of scaling into the rest of the continent. So come check out 6 amazing startups from Angola, Angola, Madagascar, Zambia, Malawi, and Eswatini, who will showcase what they've been doing for the past 6 months on the accelerator. So do come and join us. Check out the link on our website, and also see all the other meetups that we have planned coming up later in the year, over the months at least. But to Bilal and Njoki, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot, and I hope everybody else in the room has also learned a lot and have taken a few advice from the experts in this space. For myself and Jamlab team, we say peace and see you next week.